Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we have, of course, the new Season Pass tank available that everyone can pick up for World War II. It is the M46 Korean pattern. This is the free vehicle at rank 100 for the season, and it's a little bit of a hidden gem, to be honest with you. This tank is much like the Pershing at tier 8 in the tech tree. This tank is very, very powerful when you know how to use it, and I'm going to showcase off what sort of things you can do with a tank like this. We have some games that I played before I went on holiday, because unfortunately I just didn't get around to being able to get that video out for you guys at the time. But this one is essentially a pattern. It's basically the same thing as what you would see with the Pershing, essentially. It is very, very similar. Of course, this is the M46 Korean pattern, which has a slightly different turret to what you see with the Pershing. But primarily, the hull of the tank, it works pretty much the exact same. You do have the cupola on the left-hand side, as you'd see with the M26 Pershing. And whilst the armor is, to all intents and purposes, not that great, it can pull off a couple of bounces occasionally due to the size of the tracks. It's the American tracks, you know, those big chunky ones. And of course, if they do miss your cupola, they can bounce off of it. And the mantlet of this tank is okay as well. Like, you can pull off a bounce just because of the angling, like the roundness, where it will auto ricochet. But it isn't amazing. No one is going to be saying that the M46 Korean pattern is somehow going to break the game with its armor. It's not really about that. But what this tank does have is damage per minute, and it has it in abundance. This tank has 3,115 DPM, which is what we get with a tank like this. Damage per minute, once again, dependent on the tier you're at, there are like different stages of effective damage per minute. Now, this is on the lower end of what I would say for a tier 8 to have effective damage per minute, because you've got 240 alpha. Now, my ideal range from experience of tanks, and dependent on, like, within the range of about 3,000 DPM, would be like 320 alpha. It gives you a decent enough reload so that you can pump out shots, but it's also not too little damage where if you do get hit, you're feeling like, oh, I now have to land 2 in a row to make back the damage I've just taken. Whereas this definitely feels like that. But, that being said, because the DPM is so good, you've got a base reload of 4.62 seconds. This is with all of the perks and equipment. Now, the perks and equipment I've used, Improved Vents and Advanced Loader. Something could be said for removing the ventilation and going for Gun Stabilizer, which is an option. It would make this tank like a laser, but how we've currently got it set up anyway, we've got 0.27 meters of accuracy at 100 meters, which is very good. Like, you're not going to have any issues, really. So yeah, there's no point in changing and messing about with that, really. Then we've, of course, gone with advanced optics so that we can get essentially increased view range. That will just help us spot other tanks that we come into contact with. And so view range, really, really useful for that. We'll get spotting damage if you're going for marks. If you're trying to get your 3 marks on this thing, it's going to be much easier with more view range. So advanced optics is definitely there. And you can also pretty much spot anyone that shoots at you within the max view range in the game. So yeah, it's just very good to have the overcapped view range. Not if it was like 800, I probably wouldn't bother, but obviously no tank goes that high in World War II. But 1450 hit points is actually not too bad. It's kind of the traditional with all of the American medium tanks in the game. And so yeah, no real issues there. But what about the penetration values? Well, you've actually got 221 millimeters on your standard rounds, which is actually okay. There's no real issues against tier 8s using the standard rounds, other than coming up against some of the heavily armored tanks that you might see. Things like the Onis, Ohos, which just have very thick armor. But even then, you can go through them if you hit the weak points of those tanks, like, very easily. So yeah, premium rounds though for those tier 9 and tier 10 games coming up against like the Soviet heavies that just do have a kind of penetration cap. Yeah, 268 pen, pretty much the standard pen of all tier 10 mediums. So yeah, you can deal with almost every tank in the game with 268 pen, as long as you're aiming for weak points. Like, don't go auto-aiming mouses, you know, common sense. Obviously, you don't want to be pulling out in front of a mouse if you can only see the turret of it, because you can't go through the turret reliably with 268 pen with this HVAP. So yeah, we got running 3 rounds or 4 rounds of HE, just in case we come up against a Borsig, a Waffle Panzer IV, a Waffle E100, or just like lightly armored vehicles. Also useful against the artillery as well. So just makes that a little bit easier. Commander perks, we have gone for the camo and like essentially view range crew. Obviously getting our rapid loading, steady aim for increased accuracy, reload, and then obviously born leader. Skills, these are not the way in which I would do it. This is just a random crew. So in terms of like which ones I would pick first, they're not in order. But I would first start off with Sixth Sense. It's the most useful perk in the game. Because it tells you when you get spotted, where you get spotted from as well. People don't understand that you can work out where you've got spotted from. If you pulled out behind a corner and you get spotted, you can work out the angle at which you get spotted, and then you can determine where that tank is most likely going to be. You can understand when you do get spotted what type of tank it could be, because dependent on your view range. So in the pattern, the only things that can really outspot you significantly would be like a very stealthy TD, or a light tank that's in a bush, or just someone that's like sat really far in a bush. That is kind of how you can work out what sort of tanks are going to be. Less useful on like heavy tanks, but it is still incredibly useful and will save you far more hit points than taking any other skill in the game. The fact people still don't use Sixth Sense actually blows my mind, and I think they don't realize the other things. It's not just telling you that you get detected, it's telling you exactly where the opponent is. It's telling you how you could mitigate taking damage, increasing the chances of you getting away without taking any damage. Like, all of that is just so useful with Sixth Sense, whereas when you get targeted, that just tells you that someone's looking at you, which is like if you don't have Sixth Sense. It should be just an automatic thing in the game, I think. And yeah, the fact people don't use this skill as the first one actually blows my mind. Rapid loading, born leader increases our skill effectiveness, crew performance. It's going to boost up our reload as well because of the crew performance. Situational awareness gives us more view range, very, very useful. Camo expertise gives us just more camo. We want that. Stay undetected, farm those heavy tanks that are out in the open. Muffled shot, not necessarily, you know, you don't have to use this, it's just an added bonus. Green thumb, probably more situational and really only useful on maps that are, you know, very foliage dense. But even then, you know, we're just running a full camo crew anyway, so, you know, it is what it is. You could swap this out for something like snapshot or run and gun quite easily. Like, there'd be no issues in doing that. Same with muffled shot, so you could even swap out both of these to get run and gun and snapshot instead. And then silent driving just enables us to move around the map without affecting our camo too much. We're in a medium, so the bloom at which you can get detected when you move in a medium, much different to a heavy tank. Heavy tanks have that maximum. Tank destroyers are also in the same category as mediums, whereby you will make use of silent driving. Light tanks don't use it because of the fact they always have their minimum camo, essentially. Heavies have their maximum camo at all times, whether they're moving or stationary. Light tanks always have the minimum of that like circle. When you'll see on the minimap, as you move, it will bloom outwards. So that's something to take note of, and it's just useful to reduce that impact of moving, because we want to move in a tank that's a medium that has that DPM advantage. 48 kilometers an hour top speed. It's not super fast, it's not super sluggish. Engine power, we have a power to weight ratio of 8.41, which is pretty darn good. You know, for a World War II tank, it moves, it shifts, it can go up a hill, you know, that sort of stuff very easily. But now it's the time where we jump into the game and showcase how you can use a tank like this in some matches where maybe you think from the stats of it, like, oh, it's going to be absolutely garbage. How on earth am I going to rack up damage? I'll show you how you can do that. So, first game, Wide Park. What do we do? on Wide Park. This is not a great map, to be honest. I absolutely despise Wide Park. It's so small. Shouldn't be at tier 8. It should be like max tier 6. It got removed many times within World of Tanks console from higher tiers, so tier 8, etc. Then they put it back in there, and then they put it up, and they keep removing and changing it and putting it back, and they can't seem to make up their mind that it's absolutely diabolically bad for tier 8 and above. And in fact, tier 7s are even not that great either on this sort of map. But either way, it's very linear. You know, one side has one side of the railway track, the other has the other side of the railway track. You can see here we've got ourselves a AMX 1375 who for some reason decided to go up into the center next to the railway. No idea why that he would bother with that. We've got a UDES who tries to farm away some of our hit points there, but I'm not going to let that happen. The snapshotting capability of this tank, very good. You can see the accuracy coming in very clutch here. We can shoot through the tracks. You know, you haven't got terrible accuracy. Unfortunately, we hit the upper plate of the UDES at a ridiculous angle, which is why we bounced there. So we wanted to hit kind of the main, like, flat part of the bottom of the UDES there. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Now, we're kind of cresting up here, just seeing if we can get a shot on this little Adler. We do get one. It actually tracks him and does damage. So maybe we'll get some assistance from that. Doesn't look like it. I could have kept farming him because we tracked him. But I have got quite a few tanks that are deciding to come over here, and knowing that, it's time to kind of move away. The game is looking pretty diabolically bad right now. It's 68% of hit points on their team to the 51% that we've got on our team. So, you know, looks like we've got a little loss on our hands in this one. But let's see how much we can farm in this game. And, you know, maybe we could even bring it back potentially. You know, that's the whole point in moving around and changing positions like this to try and actually get some more damage and increase your chances of actually winning the game. So that's the whole point. You know, if you don't actually try, you give up, you rage at how bad your team are, only for you to do then 1,000 damage because you stayed in that position that is technically the best position. But positions can be good and bad dependent on times in the game. Like, a lot of people will choose the correct position, but then they won't move when it's not the correct position anymore. So that can definitely be an impact. Now, we go for the tracking shot on the Ho-Ri because we can track him and basically get 2 shots off by the time he actually repairs the next one. So we get another one into him there. Very easy, very casual. Got this Adler who's pushed up. Let's hopefully get another one into him, but our teammate finishes him off. And uh-oh, what is this guy doing? He's sat up by the tracks. A lot of people do not realize that you can get hit underneath the tracks. So sitting up in a position like that, terrible decision. And then obviously he's got quite a few tanks in front of him that he's focusing on, which allows us to basically farm him from the side. So the sorts of positions that you want to get into in a tank like this, in those lower alpha tanks, is those positions where essentially, like, you are countering opponents' positions by using your team's hit points. A lot of people don't do this. They'll kind of sit around, they'll do the same sort of thing. The UDES is trying to escape, but there's no escape for him, and he's gone. We've got ourselves now the Caro. Can we land this tiny pixel shot? Yes, we can. That's the 0.27 accuracy coming in there with our crew setup. When we finish that guy off, and we're up to 3 enemies taken out, but oh, that's not ideal. That's a Panther who somehow got behind us, but we've got one into him. And we've started to pull back the actual hit point pool here. We're up to, we have now changed from being down by like 20% to actually up by double. And in fact, that's only going to change for the better as we've locked the Panther completely down and removed him from the game. Up to nearly 5k damage here. But we have got a T29 who's coming out. And we go for the tracking shot on this guy. Unfortunately, he does have a repair kit. But with the T29, he over angles when he's trying to keep himself up against there. T29 trying to go for me, but we can take a couple of hits. We've got a lot of hit points left. Let's go for another one. We should repair our fuel tank, but our teammate comes swooping in and takes that one from us. So we don't quite get the 6,000 total damage. But we did deal 5,944 damage in this tier 8 medium on a map that is diabolically bad. So that was a very, very good result for this sort of map. And certainly if you had marks of excellence, you would be going up a lot in this sort of game. So yeah, a 4-minute and 38-second battle with 6k damage. That's pretty darn good going. And you could see the constant outflow of damage. But let's jump into the next game. And so that next game is Cliff. Now, Cliff is okay for a tank like this. It's actually one of the better maps, especially with matchmaking like this, you know, tier 8 matchmaking, top tier. We really shouldn't have to worry too much. It's only really tanks with super high alpha or tanks that have more DPM than us that we really have to worry about, because obviously if they've got armor, we've got the penetration to deal with them. We've got our APCR rounds. For some reason I thought maybe I'll go towards the back end of this and go up on top of this hill, which you can get up onto. It can get some nice shots into the center of the map, and of course you can get some shots on people who are maybe trying to go up into the center of the map as well, like up on top of the hill. So at the beginning, and I mean the beginning of the game, it's a decent spot, but looks like there aren't a huge amount of enemy tanks that are pushing towards here. So, you know, time for us to go in, take advantage of the fact that there aren't too many enemies that are pushing out from their spawn onto the hill quick enough. But it seems like the deployment of the team isn't terrible. I mean, there's a lot of heavies down on our side, on the western side of the map, which is just not a good idea. Going there in your heavy tank, just not very good. It's not the greatest of positions. You spend a long time just waiting to get shots. By that time, a lot of the people have already fought in the middle, and the middle is decided, and by the time that you get any chance to do anything, it's too late. Now, this position can be used because of our 10 degrees of gun depression that we do get in this tank, which is very nice. You can use that really effectively. And it feels usable as well. It's not because you're like super long. Like some very long tanks can find it difficult to use because a small bump towards the rear can make a massive difference. Luckily, not going to be the case. So that is definitely a useful opportunity to have. But at this point, I'm thinking I can take a hit, maybe one, if I need to. Luckily for us, no one actually hit us because the T-29 was for some reason going straight out and going into the back of us, pushing us. But I'm using this opportunity where the enemy team are distracted with other people to actually push up onto the top of the hill. This is risky because from the base they can hit you in the rear, which is not ideal, but luckily for me they didn't. And that's because it's later on in the game. If you do that at the beginning of the game, you're more likely to get taken out than at the later stage, unless of course the enemy have won the center. But we've won the center, no one to worry about there. Let's see if we can get some damage on this Panther. We go for one into the upper plate. The upper plate is what we want to be aiming at because we're aiming down into it. Obviously if we were on a level, we'd want to go for the lower plate. And then yes, this guy is definitely going back to the garage. There we go, easy as you like. And now we've got a couple of tanks that are down like directly below us, but there's also some tanks that seemingly went round the hill. But we need to make a decision as to where we want to go. Currently I can't see a whole lot, but we do see ourselves a little Tiger 2 in the base. I literally have never seen that tank in my entire life, the Tiger 2 Kuro. It was probably released when I wasn't playing. But yeah, I'll have to have a look and check that one out. Maybe you guys know what that is, but I had never seen that one in my life. Unless it's just like another skinned version of a Tiger. But coming over here, we knew that there were enemy tanks over this way, and we've actually found one here. But I kind of only want to expose my turret here, but unfortunately because it's quite rocky, we can't quite do that. The 45 TP, now I think some of these are bots because we're playing late at night, hence the name Ouch No Fair. But either way, if it's a bot, it's a bot. I can't deal with if Wargaming decide to add bots into the game rather than letting me wait to actually get games with humans, which would have been nice. I mean, it's much better when you're actually fighting real people. But the Adler over here looks like an actual player, so we can make some engagements against him. He's over peaking with his hull armor. We land one into the bottom of him, and at this point I can just trade my health. We've got the health. The game is looking like we are 100% going to win, so time to go in. But I don't want to overcommit. But let's see if we can get one into him. There we do. One into the side. Now it's time to go for the Gornich. Maybe we can get a bit more damage in this one. He's going after our heavy tank over here. Put one into the side of him. APCR for the side of a Gornich. Easy, easy work. And there you go. Another one added into him. So we're up to 3.25k damage. But there is still a heavy tank somewhere. And I'm pretty sure they are going to be over around the cliff. So given that we're a medium, we have that speed, we should be able to go actually find him before anyone else does, which maybe means we can get some more damage, which would be perfect. So you can see damage in this game not going to be like as much as the last game, but you can expect that, you know, as long as you're in an engagement constantly, or you're looking for engagements constantly, you can find them, you can deal damage. And at this point, I know he's probably going to be directly over in front of me down in their little dip, but it is a T-77. I'm checking the scoreboard to check what tank it actually is. It's a T-77. That could clip me out if it lands all of its shells onto me, so I wouldn't want to like YOLO too hard. But our tank destroyer ends up getting taken out, which is not bad for me because that means more damage. So we're just going to push on down. I have the hit points. We're going to win the game. It doesn't matter if he even takes me out here, but it looks like he actually went for a reload or something, or only had one for the T25. But yet again, we get another one in, and we nearly make it to 4k damage, and over 4k if we can include the assistance damage that we deal. So not a bad game whatsoever, to be honest. And of course made a little bit of money as well, a little bit of silver, but we didn't come top in the game. But that's what you can expect with a Patton. It works. It's actually really surprisingly a good tank, and a lot of people over like put the Patton and the Pershing into this bucket where they just think, oh, it's just a Pershing or a Patton. They don't realize how much damage it can actually do to you if it's played in the right way. And so yeah, going for those tracking shots, going for the continual damage, making sure you put yourself in a position where there's lots of opponents to potentially swivel to and stuff like that. It's mainly positioning is what's going to make these tanks incredible, and this one is definitely very, very fun. Plus it looks cool. I mean, who doesn't want a Patton with some teeth on it and some claws? But with that being said, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Make sure to get your hands on this as the season rank 100 reward, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.